mentioned at the outset. I have a comment here from Amalan, which is one of the more interesting comments. Amalan, you said, "Oh, I guess I caught your attention somehow or another, but maybe I answered your question before you finished the question. But if you have a follow-up to "Oh," then I'm happy to take it and try to respond. Let's see, we got an email question. Is it really the case that we can't use scaled down test environments for performance, load, and reliability testing? Yeah, short answer is yes, most of the time. The more correct, but in some ways almost dangerously nuanced answer is if you have validated a simulation model, you can use that simulation model to predict response times and behaviors under levels of load that you haven't tested. And that would include both in between two load levels that you have tested and validated the model at, and also to some extent beyond the load models, the load levels. Now, here's the reason you can probably sense the hesitance in my voice in answering this question this way. The problem, the risk that you're running here, when you validate a simulation model of performance, basically what you're validating is that the same bottlenecks, the same choke points exist in the model as exist in the test environment. So when you run the tests and you look at the results, and the results are in line with the simulations, basically what you're saying is, yeah, the real world and the desired world, these are the expected results of the test, and the predicted world of the simulation all agree about what happens under these particular circumstances, because they all agree about what is going to get choked up. Now, the problem is going to arise when the real world, as reflected in the production environment, contains a bottleneck, a constraint, a choke point that you haven't tested for because you didn't scale up to that level, and you didn't include in the model. And you wouldn't know that you hadn't included it in the model because it wouldn't have shown up when you validated the model earlier. So, how much further can you go beyond the validated level of load in the model? Well, I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer. I would say certainly some percentage, but the further out you go, the more you risk that you're shooting up one of those hockey sticks in the real world, while the model is telling you, no, it's linear, no problem, don't worry about it. So one must be very clever to pull this off. And to quote a great line out of a movie, which I'll paraphrase for reasons that those of you who've heard this line will understand, that there are 1,000 ways to screw it up when you try to extrapolate out from scaled down models. And if you think of 20 of them, you're a genius. And it's just too many ways for it to go wrong. So I really would recommend extreme caution if you're doing this, and be honest with people about the limits of your knowledge if you're being pushed to do this by management. So Marie asks, referring to page 11 of your notes, careless OJT can kill your project. What is OJT? Sorry, I thought I had disambiguated that acronym there, but I guess I didn't. OJT is on-the-job training. And the point I was trying to make was that one of the things that the worst practice of testing is to just assign people who are interested in performance testing to do performance testing and then see what happens, because what happens is false positives, in other words, bug reports that don't correspond to actual bugs, and false negatives, which is missing stuff that does correspond to actual bugs. Evelyn comes back. Any suggested ways to test for the load, test the load for a cloud server? Well, this brings us back into this, how do we test production? You know, I mean, this is one of the great mysteries of cloud computing, and obviously, you know, there are some very, very smart people who haven't figured this out yet. Amazon, you know, very, very smart people, and have been able to produce very reliable service in terms of Amazon itself, have been more stymied with their online cloud resource offering, because, you know, when you start talking about offering resources in the cloud, you know, what people are going to do with those resources is very unpredictable. So, you know, it's tough enough to say, okay, I've got an application like Amazon or you know, something along those lines, another e-commerce application, and there's some pretty straightforward things that can be done with that, and fairly tightly prescribed, and your set of mixes of transactions and loads and so forth that can occur is fairly well constrained. You get out into cloud stuff and saying, okay, well, you know, there's this resource and it's available, you know, to any number of things with, like Amazon did. Then, you know, there are problems, and we've seen this with Google too. I mean, again, a collection of very smart people, but still having a fair amount of reliability problems with some of their cloud offerings. So this is hard. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do a full replica of the production environment if the production environment is 10,000 servers distributed around the world, but you are going to need to do some long, hard thinking about how to simulate that and how to model that, because it's, you know, otherwise you're going to run into surprises just like Google and Amazon have. I got a question from Gayatri. Good session, so thank you. Will you be sharing the presentation with the audience? I'm assuming that you perhaps joined a little late, so I'll mention this again for those people who might have joined late. The presentation, the slides for the presentation, PDF format, are on the RBCS website. You see the address right here. So if you go out to rbcs-us.com and go to the basic library page, then you will find these slides and the slides for previous presentations as well. Let's see, Marie says thanks for the answer to resolving what OJT is. You're quite welcome. Sorry about the acronym there. I try to avoid using acronyms, but the vagaries of PowerPoint sometimes make it necessary. A comment from Lee here. Hi, Rex. Thanks for another interesting webinar. You're quite welcome. It's always a pleasure. Lee continues, this is not really a question, more of an observation. I recently attended your presentation in Melbourne on risk-based testing and have started to implement risk-based testing on a new project here recently. We are just going through the quality risk analysis, and this webinar has given me food for thought for the performance, load, and reliability sections of that analysis. Thanks, Lee. Great. Yes, that should give you food for thought. Actually, on two parts. One is in terms of identifying quality risk items. Certainly, hopefully, get you thinking about that. But